Hey, welcome to Post-Traumatic Growth with Dr. Gerry Crete. That's me. And today I have such a special episode. I'm so excited to tell you. We have Dr. Donald Wallenfang back with us, and he is here with his daughter. And this is a story that is very powerful. You know, his daughter, when a teenager, was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and it changed everything. Not just for her, but for the people who loved her. Where the body becomes something to monitor, control, and even fear, really changes one's own sense of self and one's relationship with one's family. So today we're sitting with a father and a daughter. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a young teenager and developed an eating disorder. He's a theologian who has spent his life studying the meaning of suffering, and then had to watch his own child suffer without being able to fix it. So I'm so excited today to have Dr. Donald Wallenfang. He's a father, a secular Carmelite, professor of theology. He's studying counseling also. And his daughter, Ellen, who's a singer-songwriter. She's 25, based in Detroit. And she's going to share her story. And I'm so excited to have both of you with us today. Well, I'm delighted to be here and have Dr. Donald Wallenfang with us again, and he had shared a bit of his journey. But today we have the delightful situation of meeting his daughter, Ellen, and she has a story to share, one that involves an eating disorder and recovery, and we're just so excited to have her with us. Hey, Ellen, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And Dr. Wallenfang, thank you for being here again, and thank you for bringing your daughter and sharing with us.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Crete.
So maybe just to get started, like, Ellen, I'm going to give you the floor a little bit. I'd love to hear a little your story, and if you can share, you know, your experiences, and then we will have some questions after, but I want to give you enough time to share whatever you would like to.
Yeah, totally. Just kind of like an overview of life and cool. Yeah, so my name is Ellen. I am 24. I'm about to be 25 years old. Right now I'm working as a barista. I went to college for music. And yeah, this past couple years have just kind of been a really kind of peaceful time of healing for me. And yeah, as Dr. Crete mentioned, kind of a few years ago, I experienced kind of the peak of, you know, a terrible eating disorder. And so kind of where I'm at now is a place I'm very happy to be in, is a place where I'm happy to have gotten to, where, you know, I'm living in this very peaceful small town, which is, you know, nothing like I pictured my early 20s might be like, but it's been very helpful for me to just kind of to heal and to kind of land into, you know, what I'm supposed to become, hopefully. So yeah, I went to college for music, and that's kind of been the focal point of my life, kind of up until that point and kind of through college. And yeah, in high school, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which I think is, you know, a pretty intimidating diagnosis at any age, but I think it's, you know, tricky when you're in high school and you're just dealing with all kinds of stuff, and it can, you know, chronic illness can really get in the way of a lot of stuff. And so I had, you know, huge aspirations when I was growing up about being an artist and a musician and, you know, doing all these big things. And I think that, chronic illness being thrown in the mix makes that a little more difficult. And yeah, so kind of, you know, struggled with that a bit up until college, and kind of all came to a bit of a peak there. And yeah, so kind of where I'm at now in life is just kind of healing from all of that, and yeah, doing a lot better.
So you got this diagnosis in high school then, and I'm imagining like that was a major, just like you're saying, like a major disruption to your life. Like what, I imagine you were, I don't know if you'd say typical, but like you were, high school student and just enjoying life, and then you get this. How did that impact your, your sense of self? And
yeah, totally. I think that there is a lot of stigma around type 1 or just diabetes in general. I think that word is really scary. And I mean, even for me at the time I was 15, I really didn't know that there were two kinds of diabetes. I didn't really know what that meant. And I think for me that word was really scary. I didn't really want to share that diagnosis with with anybody, because it just, it felt shameful, felt like something to be embarrassed of. I think in our culture, in our society, like diabetes and kind of the narrative around it is people are made to feel that it's your fault, that you can cause it and you can, and I think that's really sad. And I think that, chronic illness is never anybody's fault. It's often something that you can't prevent. So I think it definitely impacted my sense of self, just in that it was this huge thing that I felt like I needed to hide and to kind of protect other people from learning about, kind of even hide it from myself. I mean, there's, so much, I mean, like I would say all the time, even now I still say, like, sometimes I forget that I even have this thing, even though it's a huge part of my life. So yeah, definitely the diagnosis affected, certainly my sense of self and yeah, my confidence for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because I when I think about it, getting a diagnosis of chronic illness is a form of trauma. It's something that you weren't expecting, and it was an obstacle, a challenge in your path that then, challenges your sense of self and challenges who you are. And especially in adolescence, like you're still figuring that out. And so now all of a sudden you're trying to like make sense of this. And I'm sad to hear that there was that stigma, right? That you felt like it wasn't something like you had to hide, something you couldn't, like you didn't feel good about yourself, and you were just still even learning about it, right?
Right.
So, this program, post-traumatic growth, we're really looking at, we're looking at trauma and the effects of trauma, and we're also looking at, how do we change and grow even from our suffering, even from our negative experiences. And so what was that path look like for you? Like, how did you come to terms with this diagnosis, and even the fact that you're here talking about it on a podcast means you've overcome a lot, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're not a 15-year-old afraid to tell anybody.
Definitely not. No, if you had told me that I would be doing this when I was in high school, I'd be like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, let's see. Where should I start with this? So, I struggled a lot with dealing with the type 1 in high school, and, kind of to get into how this, I guess, ties into having an eating disorder. So there's an eating disorder called Diabulimia. And essentially what that means is if someone that has diabetes is not taking their insulin as they should, basically, like in very simple terms, your body will stop absorbing all of the sugar that you eat, and you will very quickly lose weight. And that wasn't, I didn't know that. I didn't know that this thing existed. What I did know how to do was not take my medication. And I did know that there was, a side effect of that, with a bunch of other horrible side effects, like serious, like brain fog and like memory loss and like mood swings and all of this kind of stuff, is that you lose weight, which, when, you're in high school, that sounds awesome. So yeah, and in college. And so, and I kind of slowly, I would kind of ask, doctors different things, like, can you tell me about, like what it, what was really happening, like where, if you take insulin, where is it stored, what happens if you don't take it, all that kind of stuff. And I slowly began to put that together for myself and kind of use that insulin manipulation as a, as a form of disordered eating in a sense. And yeah, there was I carried on like that for a really long time, and I still, performed well. I don't know how that works, but performed well in all my classes and, maintained friendships and relationships. And, but I think, after like 6-7 years of doing that, like, it catches up to you. And so, yeah, I got to kind of my senior year of college, and I kind of went from being like a very good student to essentially failing all of my classes in my final semester of school. And that pretty much just like went over my head as well. Like I was so, kind of so sick at that point that I really barely knew what was happening. And yeah, and I don't think I really knew where to go from there. And it kind of took me like a few months to like, I tried to keep, I was working as a music teacher at the time as a barista. I tried to keep working as doing those things and trying to maintain, but it became very clear to me that like this was absolutely not sustainable. And I just felt very sad and just like very defeated. And I knew that I wanted something to change. I needed something to change. And so, I literally remember like sitting in the parking lot of like the school I was working at as a music teacher. And I literally like Googled like treatment near me. Like, where can I go to like just kind of begin to sort out what is happening? And I think by that point too, I knew that there was like a word for what I was dealing with, that I knew what diabulimia was. And I was like, and so then I ended up doing, obviously further research on if there is anywhere that I can go that treats this, that can help me, because I cannot even begin to heal this on my own. If I want, to have a life beyond this, and so, I was able to find, a eating disorder treatment center, that treated that. And yeah, I spent, 6 months doing treatment, and it was very good. And that's why I can sit and talk about this. And, it was, exactly what I needed. And I was really lucky to have a really positive experience. I think sometimes, treatment can be even difficult to go through. And I think, yeah, I was really lucky to have, a team that really knew what they were doing and knew how to help. And, yeah, so it's definitely, I think I was also just lucky to have the presence of mind to know that like it was time to figure this out,
That was what was really impressing me in what you just shared, is that you got to a place where it feels like it could have been a fork in the road of just getting worse and just crashing. And 100%. You actually said, how can I get help? That blows me away. I think that's beautiful. And what do you think, like, what do you think really helped you to kind of say, hey, I'm going to love myself enough, to not keep going where I've been going and actually get help? What helped you get there?
I think that, I just felt, I knew that there was like, I don't know, joy beyond all of that, joy that I had experienced that wasn't this. And I, wanted to have that again. And I was like, that's not going to be possible the way that I'm, going about all of this. And like, I think, and I was 21, I think at the time when I got to that decision. And like, I think I was just really unhappy. I think at kind of, what I said, like about how I was in high school, like I was very, like, I had a lot of huge aspirations of things I wanted to do. And like, I think that kind of ambition has always been something that's been like an integral part of my personality. And I think when I felt like I was losing that specifically, that was scary to me. Like I'm losing the thing that when I look at myself, that's what I think of. You know, I don't even have that in, you know, I don't even see that in myself anymore. Just kind of, yeah, even with where I was working and what I was doing, I was just like, my life doesn't even feel like I'm in control of it anymore. Like I'm not happy with the way anything is going. And I knew that if I wanted to get that back, you know, I needed to really do a hard reset and figure that out, you know.
Now, did faith have a part in your journey at any point?
You said, did faith have a part?
Yeah, in your journey at any point.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I remember like in that experience, I think like a feeling that has become very familiar to me is just kind of this like, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, but it's just like this undercurrent of peace. It has become a familiar feeling kind of when I'm you know, experiencing things that feel difficult. And it really like, it's a piece that kind of can like disturb all the craziness and just kind of like, you feel safe to go with that. And it's something that I've like definitely kind of found my footing on. And like when I have to make any kind of big decisions or just like when things like feel like way too much, like if I can find that, you know, I think that's huge. And so truly just like that, you know, yeah, like I said, that undercurrent of peace. And I think that is like a feeling that I clung to when I would try to, when I would think about my life, especially like when I was trying to figure out like in terms of treatment and all that stuff, like what I wanted to do or like kind of how to move forward. That peaceful undercurrent. I mean, that it's almost like, it's like like a lazy river. It feels like in a sense that just kind of is, it just, if you can just go with it, like it's, you know, it'll take you exactly where you're supposed to be. And so I think like getting help was part of that journey. And I think that to me is something I have, you know, a lot of faith in. And yeah.
So what would you tell a young person, maybe a teen who is struggling with, maybe similar to you with diabetes and the in the form of the you know, the eating disorder you struggle with, or even any young woman struggling with, you know, any other, you know, type of anorexia or bulimia, any other kind of eating disorder, and her own self-image, like what would you want to tell a young teen who was struggling with that?
Well, I think I first would just affirm that if someone did share that, I mean, that would be the first thing is just, you know, that's a really vulnerable thing to admit to yourself, to anybody, that's something that you're struggling with. And I think then I would say that things will get better if you want them to. They will. And you just have to believe in that, and, you know, believe in that for yourself. Find some part of you, maybe it's a part of you that is on the other side of this, you know, but I think if you can just believe in that, I think that's what I would say. Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of like the treatment and counseling that you experienced, what was the most, you know, anything, only what you're comfortable sharing, but like, what was the most impactful for you? Like what were some of the anything that was a game changer for you?
Oh man. This feels a little random, but I think, so in treatment, I did like 2 months of residential where, it's pretty much inpatient, you don't have your phone. You're very heavily, you're monitored all the time. And that was with me and, 5 other clients. And then after 2 months of that, I just moved to kind of 7 days a week of I'm going somewhere for outpatient and I'm, with a bigger group all the time. And I remember the first time, like when I got to like the inpatient, the residential part, I remember like I got there like in time to like have like dinner at the house. And I was sitting there with like 5 other clients who are all very sick and we're about to all attempt to sit through and eat dinner together, which I was like, this feels like a terrible idea. I don't know how this is helpful for anyone. We're all struggling with like very different things. Everyone is having their own crazy thing that's going to happen in their minds in the next hour. And this is insane. Like, I don't know. I was like, how is this helpful for me? How is this helpful for anyone? And you slowly learn how to sit in that discomfort. Each of those meal times, each of those like snacks that we would have. And I mean, it would be, everyone was very different. Everyone had different diagnoses. Everyone was different ages. I mean, kind of the average age was like a woman in her early 20s, but then there were women like, and there was, there were some guys there too, but there were some women who were like in their 40s and their 60s. I mean, and everyone kind of comes in and has that experience where it's like, I can't believe that I have to do this with all these people. And then you slowly just like, you just learn how to like kind of be objective and to just like kind of quiet your mind and focus yourself on your work and not really worry about anyone else and kind of the comparison. I mean, that's what's even crazy about it is like you're comparing your eating disorder to someone else's, and it's just like wild. So it's almost this very radical way of facing things like head on. And I think for me, like that was probably one of the most helpful things to me. I mean, obviously I was in groups that were focused on certain things, on certain aspects of eating disorders and whatever. But I do think just being in that culture where you're around a bunch of other people who are also very sick and they're trying to figure it out and you're trying to do it side by side. And I think that definitely had the biggest impact because I think I was able to, figure out how I can kind of rise above this noise and just kind of focus on, or just very objectively let me get through this, hour and also just try to have, a conversation with the person next to me. We're going to try to just like as peacefully as we can, get through this dinner or whatever it is. And I think it kind of makes all of this stuff about food and your body not feel so loud anymore, or know that you can get through something that feels very intimidating and you'll be okay. I'll get through that hour and I was okay. And I'm going to do another one and I'm going to do another one and it's going to be all right. So I think just kind of that exposure too was really helpful for me.
Well, I love all that. And I think you were speaking to the power of a group, right?
Yeah.
And even though there was a commonality, but there were differences, and even despite the differences, you weren't alone.
Yeah.
And even if some people are different ages and their issues were slightly different.
I remember that was such a unifying thing for us, for everyone, even like in groups, especially to hear from someone who, you feel their behaviors might be different, their age might be different, but to hear, the way that they're feeling, like you're like, oh wow, like I feel the exact same, and just kind of learning that even though everyone's kind of behaviors are different, it's everyone's eating disorder functions very similarly, and yeah.
Well, and I'm curious too, like, and this might help us segue to bring your dad into the conversation a little bit, in that, like your story is also, you're sharing, I imagine, and it's being witnessed and understood and heard. And then there's their story, which you're also witnessing and reverencing. and on some level we see the common story, and then in all of us, right? And then almost, and maybe the possibility of, like, we together can create a new story here. We can create something new. We can make those choices, like you said, and be able to, have that hour and come out of it being like, I was able to do that. And So, if you want to say, before I go to your dad, I guess I just want to make sure, like, does that resonate for you, this whole idea of story and connecting with others' stories?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't, not saying something that you wouldn't have agreed with or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Because I mean, with Dr. Wallenfang, you're we talked a little bit about story, right? And last time we met and everything, but maybe before we get to that, your thoughts on that, like, are you okay to share a little of what was it like for you as a father, and when your daughter was struggling with this, and did you know right away, or how did you? What are your memories and feelings and thoughts on all that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I remember the exact day, time, place when my wife Megan called me and told me that Ellen had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. As she said, she was 15. It was October 4th, 2016, the memorial of St. Francis of Assisi. And we still wonder to this day, what significance does that have on Ellen's personality, her spirituality, her journey, and for us as a family. So she had to go right to the emergency room because the blood sugar was so high. And as Ellen was saying, it's a chronic autoimmune disease. Type 1 diabetes is very serious. And praise God that insulin was invented, first discovered in 1921, and commercial production began in 1923. So we live in a time when it's a treatable thing. And I kind of had that idea right away that this is treatable. Like, it doesn't mean she has only so many months to live or something. But I felt, okay, we can figure this out. But as Ellen was saying, the nature of diabetes, it's a beast. It seems straightforward. Like, okay, you can find out what the blood sugar is and then give the right amount of insulin and go on with the day. But how she was first taught to do it manually, like poking your finger multiple times a day, drawing blood, getting the blood sugar reading, giving yourself insulin injections, all of that. It's like, it's kind of like torturous, like you get used to getting stuck with needles all day long. And that's a very difficult thing. But praise God, again, there's technologies that have been developed. And once Ellen got the Dexcom monitor and eventually the insulin pump, things really came together. It was super helpful. But as a parent, what's so hard is when there's a chronic illness and it's serious like that, and it's one that there's so much maintenance involved, that when we sit down for a meal as a family, as Ellen's dad, it's like the question was always right away, Ellen, did you take insulin, for the meal? And everything, all of our conversations, we have to talk about the difficult health situation. We're all together preoccupied with type 1 diabetes. And because you're on the edge of life and death, if you don't talk about it, you, as a parent, you can't not talk about it. But at the same time, it's like a paradox because, like, I'd text Ellen, like I was connected with her Dexcom, for example. And I hope Ellen doesn't mind me sharing this. But
oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and I would just text her even throughout the day, Ellen, it looks like you need to take insulin, looks like you need to take insulin. And so it's like the main content of our conversation is that stuff instead of what else is going on in life, what else does she like to do for fun. And that's really hard, is a constant strain on our relationship. And again, it's a kind of thing, and it was something I learned with family therapy with Ellen when she was at residential treatment, something I learned was the importance of, in a sense, not moralizing the situation, because it's nobody's fault. And, there's so much that it's not having to do with anyone's will. It just is what it is. And so for Ellen to grow in that understanding for herself, to Megan and I, her parents, to grow in that kind of understanding, like, yeah, that's right. It's not a moral issue here. It's not that she's doing something immoral by not taking the insulin. Like, there's something at the level of the involuntary that needs the professional mental health intervention to bring that to surface, and not to always interpret things in terms of the typical moral categories of human behavior.
Mm-hmm. I love that you just shared that and how it became a preoccupation in the relationship, and it actually like changed the dynamic, right? And I can imagine, Ellen, like on some level wanting to resist that, right? Like wanting, starting to resent.
It wasn't on some level. It was level 100 probably.
Yeah. So how did you guys navigate that? Like if you're kind of starting to resent, your dad for, being on top of that all the time, and yet you had another purpose for a while that you had to eventually face. So how did that play out?
Well, yeah. So I remember he had access, to my numbers, and I mean, my mom, well, yeah, I guess she also did, but she wouldn't, I guess, text me about it. But I feel like we would even be in some kind of a conversation sometimes with my mom, and she would maybe just randomly like lift her phone up and point at the number that it was or whatever. Be like, okay, see, this is what's happening. But yeah, I just think it was just a huge point of contention. I mean, it was like, even Dad, just hearing you say that, like that question about even like at a mealtime, like, did you take insulin? I mean, like, I remember that would even continue. Yeah. Like even into college. And it was just like, I mean, it, and being, I think I would say yes. I would say no. I probably lie all the time and say I did. Yeah, whatever. And yeah, it was just like, but I think the feeling that it was, I mean, I wasn't thinking about, that I didn't take the insulin, that was bad. I think the feeling that I had was just like, no, I'm just like messing up and I'm just disappointing and just like not, which that's literally not I mean, objectively, that's not what's happening, but I think that was like the feeling that I had, So yeah, I just think it was like, and what I think, I just interpreted it as, it always felt like my parents were mad at me. Like, that's just how it always felt. Like, they're just mad at me. They're always mad at me because I just am not doing anything right. And like, I just can't, you know what I mean? And I think it was like, too, like he was saying, like, it seems like it's very like straightforward, to take care of. And like, on paper it is. And like, I think that was the confusing part for everybody, was just like, if 2 + 2 = 4, like what's going on? Like, and like, yeah. And I would even get frustrated too, cause like sometimes I would do it right the way that the paper says, and then, but the result wouldn't be like, my blood sugar would still not cooperate. And then I would just be like, it's not even worth it. I don't even want to do it, like, it's just whatever. So I guess like, yeah, on my side of things, like, and Dad, you can share, I guess, as well, how you think things played out. But I mean, like, I just think like it was, just a lot of like frustration, like on both ends, because everyone just had, it just kind of came out as frustration and maybe anger because, we just kind of couldn't get through to the bottom of things, I guess.
Well, it really speaks to, right, a need for counseling, right, a need for some support, because yes, yes, you have an illness, and yes, these are the proper procedures that one must follow. And of course, your parents are going to, they're scared, they love you, right, and they want you to follow the procedure. But unless you account for how this is impacting you emotionally, how this is impacting you on a personal level, not just the logical, steps or whatnot. Unless it's accounted for emotionally, you can't really process, right? Like what's going on for you internally, what's going on for you in the relationships you have. And so were you able to get to a place where you could, it sounds like maybe it was in the treatment center, but were you able to process really the emotions that were interfering with your ability to do what you needed to do for your health?
Like for like my parents and I, like
yeah
in that way. Yeah. Yeah, I think family therapy was a great like start. I think that was huge. I mean, we had never done anything like that before. We had like family sessions once a week. And I feel like I had an unfair advantage because I got to sit there on the couch with my therapist, and when the Zoom call ended, I got to continue talking. But I thought it was really helpful because I think it just began to introduce some concepts that we didn't all know as a group before. And I think, like, I learned so much, and it was helpful to invite, my parents into that because, and it was, I think, I looked forward to like our sessions because, it was cool to like see my parents learn as well, because I think therapy was something that had, become extremely helpful for me, and I was excited to share that with them. And yeah, I think it was a great like starting point and kind of place for us to go from after, and kind of continue throughout the last couple of years. Yeah.
No, that's great. So, Dr. Wallenfang, what was that like for you, and what did you discover in all that with family therapy?
Yeah, as Ellen was saying, when we did the family therapy sessions, it was through therapy because we're in different states across the country, actually. And for my wife and I, mental health care, again, I had some experience of it. Like when I was in middle school, my parents made me go to counseling because I was struggling with a lot of mood issues and things. And I didn't even go for that long. I remember it was helpful. But throughout our family life, even when Ellen was diagnosed with diabetes, you're left with the impression as a parent, it's a physical medical issue. And if we can address it correctly in terms of the metrics, all is well. And it took us so long to realize all of the laminates, the layers of the mental health. And as you're saying, the emotional validation, the emotional concerns that are there that need to be addressed first and foremost, instead of just the metrics. And so I remember in our family session with the therapist talking to us about hyperarousal and hypoarousal. And those were concepts I hadn't really heard before. And what do you mean hyperarousal? I don't get hyperaroused. Do I? I'm really not hyperaroused. But to name that.
Wait, sorry, I want to. There was this one session we had where I think the therapist sent my parents like a handout before. Well, she's always would send hands, but there was one she sent on a handout on communication. And I think the 30 minutes for a 45-minute session, my dad just like argued with the first sentence on the paper that defined the word communication. It was just a very, very simple handout. And that was how we spent a lot of the time. It was so funny. But yeah, I mean, like, it was just great. I mean, it was like, these are the family dynamics that we're working with, and it's like, that's part of it, and yeah.
So what was for each of you, what was the big learning curve here? Like, what was the light bulb moment, or what was a big change and shift for each of you?
One thing I can say, having a background in, Catholic theology and philosophy, Back in the Middle Ages when the universities were founded, theology was called the queen of all sciences. So you can have a kind of hubris as a theologian and say, well, I've got the antidote for everything. It's like, it's our faith. Let's read more scripture. Let's pray more. Let's go to mass more or something. But again, the laminates of the human person, like, the Catholic Christian meta model of the person text that's out now from Divine Mercy University, and all the laminates of the person. As people of faith, we also have to take stock of all of these and deal with all of these. It's not enough just to pray, just to talk about Jesus, and as if we're going to get this spiritual inspiration and it's going to make everything better. We have to work through things, just like there's medical fields that treat the body in these different ways. There's ones that treat the mind and the soul, psychology, where it gets its name from the Greek word psyche. So that's something, it's not just overcome with intelligence and fidelity to the metrics, but the importance of emotions within the lives of human beings, like you're saying, that we had to really learn to deal with these in a professional, interventional way. And my wife and I weren't necessarily really familiar with the mental health world that much. And so it's like you go online and you just start searching things, and it's like shooting in the dark and trying to figure out, and we tried different things, but also the question of trust in the mental health world. Like, is it going to be faith-based, faith-integrated, or is it going to be things that are going to oppose the faith and start to point to the faith as like a pathology? Because we see that too out there. So it's like, how do you navigate all of this? And I think what's happened with our family and everything Ellen learned in residential treatment, and my wife Megan and I learned together, it's shown us the very important need for integrating both faith and the stuff of deepest conviction in life, is the questions about God, but also the questions about ourselves and all the layers of ourselves.
I love that. My impression a little is that, I have a father as well with 3 children, 2 daughters too. And my sense is that, I was a therapist, when they were teenagers, and, I had one of them tell me not to use my counseling on them at one point, and so you can get clinical, right? Just as you could get theological, you can get technical, you can get, you're in a good intention, right? The intention is to solve the problem. But when it comes to being, with someone you care about, like a daughter you love, it needs to shift a little bit to like, I see you, I love you, I care about you, I want to hear from you, I want to know your experience. Like, and that's coming from the heart. That's not coming from a therapist, a theologian, or a philosopher. That's coming from a dad. It's coming from a parent who just loves his child. And I feel like that is powerful, and that's life-changing and important for all of us. Well, I think we're having to wrap up soon. I am really thankful to both of you, really, and Ellen. I'm just so impressed with you, and I know sort of just coming on here and sharing your story like you did, and being willing to do that, and I love it that you were sharing your journey, and in working through this issue in your own way, but also then we were able to bring in a bit of how family therapy helped you both and helped your whole family, and it was part of that healing process. So I'm going to ask each of you, just in closing, like, what would you want therapists to know that was important to you? And especially if there's anything for a therapist who happens to be Catholic who is wanting to integrate their faith, if there's anything you would want, anything you would want them to understand better or to know better. But you can approach either of those or both of those. I don't know. Ellen, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. like, what would I want them to know kind of beforehand?
Yeah, what would be a takeaway you would hope that, therapists would understand to understand all this better?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think, I feel like therapists are good at what they do.
Helpful. Okay. Well, why don't I ask you a different, because that's maybe not a fair question, right?
Sure.
Well, somebody maybe more in your situation that hadn't quite gotten to the place you got when you were, when you were sitting there, I think you said in a parking lot, and you realized, hey, I need to do something. What would be an important takeaway you would want someone in that situation to hear?
Yeah. I think that, I said this earlier, that like, there is always an opportunity for things to get better if you want them to. I think, you don't have to, it's easy to, and I've done this, and I feel like I deal with this in a smaller way a lot of days, but you don't have to just let your life pass you by, and you don't have to just be passive, and like you can, if you have a tiny bit of strength, you can get on Google, you can tell, you can reach out to a friend, someone that you trust, and just begin to kind of share what's going on. And even if it feels like a mess and it doesn't, I think there will be someone that can help you. There will be someone that can help you, and someone that will understand. And even if you haven't met them yet, there will be that. And yeah, I just think that, being able to even just have that kind of, I don't know, radical like compassion for yourself, that I'm deserving of this. I remember that was a huge conversation in residential treatment, was, I'm not sick enough to be here. I can't be here. I shouldn't be here. And then the therapist would say, well, you got through the hour-long questionnaire on the phone. Like, you're definitely like, your insurance is paying for it, so you definitely are. Just that, like, you're deserving of care, and you're deserving of that. So.
Well, and I moved by, when you were saying before about feeling shame around that diagnosis, and I think that, I don't know any people of goodwill that would ever think less of you or someone in your situation for having, this diagnosis, and yet you felt that people would. And I was inspired even for this podcast by, I don't know if you've seen it, but K-pop Demon Hunters, this movie, and the song Beauty in the Broken, like, has the line Beauty in the Broken Glass. Yeah. And it's about bringing the light. I should have brought the light into it instead of hiding. And that moves me, to be honest, even though I wasn't a big, like, my daughter it was my daughter who got me to watch that movie. She said, "Oh, Dad, you have to watch this movie." and she's a clinical psychologist. I love it. and I said, "Okay, I trust you. Fine, I'll watch it." But I was moved to tears by that, and that so many people are hiding, and instead the message was, no. When you put the light on it, when you bring light to it, it's beautiful. There's a beauty in it. And it's not something I have to hide. I can be myself. And I feel like that was the message in that movie. And I feel like you were sharing that when you made that choice, and you made the choice even to be here today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Donald, I'll give you the last word, Dr. Wallenfang. What would you want to share to clinicians out there who, and to maybe even to parents, who maybe clinicians who are parents, any takeaway you would like to offer?
Yes, for sure. I think as I continue to study clinical psychology, I realize the importance of continuing to gain competencies as a clinician. And, this term diabulimia doesn't even appear in the DSM. There's kind of implicit reference in both the sections on anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa about insulin reduction and manipulation. But a lot of clinicians aren't aware of this particular eating disorder, for example. And instead of being like, well, I don't deal with that, I'll just have to refer somewhere out there. Like sometimes locally, you might be the only one who can step in and intervene. And so to be ready to keep developing competencies and getting trained in different modalities of treatment for different psychopathologies. And also, as we learn in our formation, while there's psychopathology, there's also positive psychology, and always to try to incorporate the strengths-based methodologies along with just the diagnostic criteria and things. So as Ellen was talking and thinking about the importance of connecting emotionally within the clinical setting, but also empowering that within the family setting too. And it can seem like just really basic things about emotion, like hyperarousal versus hypoarousal, and kind of examination of psychological conscience. How am I doing in these areas? But mental health, professional mental health intervention can do so much to bring all that to surface. Even the other night, I called up Ellen. I was learning about internal family systems in one of my courses, and I was like, Ellen, what do you think about this internal family system? And we had like a half-hour conversation, and I just love it. And she texted me the next day and said, Dad, I loved how you just called me and wanted to talk about that. It was so fun. And, so the, competencies she gained going through treatment, and now the competencies I'm gaining in studying clinical psychology, and together we're able to have these really awesome conversations, very mutually, sensitive conversations, mutually supportive conversations. That's just so wonderful. And the world of professional mental health care is making this possible for us. So it's huge.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I love it. You're bonding on that. You can only imagine the conversations I have with my daughter. She's studying DBT, which is not a type of therapy that I was particularly interested in, and she's working with a lot of, borderline and very difficult cases. And it's not where I go, but we talk back and forth about it. And eventually in our conversations, we learned, wow, actually DBT and internal family systems have more in common than I thought. It was part of that conversation. So anyway, it's so delightful to hear, you and your daughter being able to talk about that. And so let me just thank you both. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was just such a delight to hear from you, both of you and each of you. And well, thank you again, and God bless you. And I pray that as you guys continue in your journey, Ellen, I think my impression is there's some interesting things in your future. You've got so much ahead. That sounds... And that you brought the light to it is a good thing. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you both. Take good care. Until next time. What Ellen and Dr. Wallenfang offer today is the gift of witness, not so much instruction. Flourishing is not the absence of chronic illness or a history of struggle. It's the recovery of meaning within it. The body became the battlefield for Ellen, type 1 diabetes, made food a life or death calculation, and the eating disorder made it a war. What we heard today is what it sounds like on the other side of the war. Not victory in the way we usually mean it, but integration. For Dr. Wallenfang, the theologian who had become just a dad, the gap between what you know about suffering intellectually and what it costs you personally, that gap is where the real formation happens. And for anyone living with type 1 diabetes, with disordered eating, or watching someone you love navigate both, accompaniment is not fixing, it is staying. For parents who feel helpless, your presence is not nothing, your presence is the thing. Now, this episode is educational. It is not meant to be therapy or diagnosis or professional care. If you or someone you love is struggling with an eating disorder or a chronic health condition, please reach out to a licensed provider. You can call 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or contact the National Alliance for Eating Disorders helpline at 1-866-662-1235. Thank you, Ellen, for the courage to offer your story as a gift. And thank you, Dr. Wallenfang, for the witness of a father who stayed present when presence was all he had. Thanks again. Until next time.